voice end up back at the office, don't you, Ethan?
You should be used to it by now.
There is a very specific kind of tension that comes from only classic survival horror games. It's not just about some scary monster on the screen. The limited saves, the inventory management, and that constant nagging feeling that you are one missed shot away from a game over screen. For a long time, it felt like the classic survival horror era was buried completely, replaced by action horror shooters or endless hide-and-seek simulators. But if you take a closer look at the indie scene right now, the spirit of the 90s and early 2000s is making a massive comeback. Today we are looking at 20 upcoming titles that are carrying that torch. If you ever wondered what Silent Hill would feel like if it were set in a frozen Soviet bunker, Kriophobia is basically that nightmare realized. You are playing as Anna, a geophysicist who gets trapped in this massive underground facility on a desolate island after a research trip goes sideways. It's not just the monsters you have to worry about here. The game treats the deadly cold as a constant threat to your survival. Visually, it's got a really unique look. It uses these hand-drawn, painterly textures that remind me of the more artistic PS2 era titles. The developers went with handcrafted static camera angles, so it's got that cinematic, voyeuristic feel of the classics. For the Resident Evil fans, the soul is definitely in the tension. Combat is weighted and unforgiving, and the Steam page makes it clear that running away is often the smarter move to save your limited resources. It's very much a slow burn experience where managing your inventory and solving puzzles are the only ways you are getting out of the ice alive. Cult of Dawn is wearing its inspirations right on its sleeve, calling itself a Resident Evil 4-like title. It drops you into a reality-bending event where you're exploring everything from abandoned mansions to creepy cultist lairs and desolate woods. If you've been missing that specific era where horror started getting just a bit more combat heavy but still kept its weirdness, this is one to watch out for. The camera system is actually pretty flexible here. It offers fixed, free and over-the-shoulder views as well. It's also got that chunky early 2000s aesthetic that feels like a high-end PS2 game. But what really gives it that Resident Evil factor though is the undead shopkeeper and the old-school inventory management. You will be still hunting for save stations and deciding what gear to sell or keep. Plus, it features over 100 so-called sanity effects that break the fourth wall, which adds a bit of a eternal darkness spice to the classic Resident Evil formula. This one takes us to Brazil during the military dictatorship of the 60s and the 80s. You play as Renata, who is searching for answers about her past in an abandoned military research base. It's a really heavy setup, using the real-life horrors of an oppressive regime as the backdrop for a survival horror mystery. The look is pure late 90s retro 3D. It's got those low poly edges and jittery textures that will make you feel like you're playing a Lost Saturn or PlayStation 1 title. It's a short, punchy experience, aiming for about 2 to 3 hours of gameplay. If you are a fan of the item hunting style of classic Resident Evil, you'll feel right at home. It's all about maze-like level design, limited resources, and choosing your battles carefully so you don't run out of supplies before reaching one of the multiple endings. If you are into the grimy, oppressive atmosphere of Silent Hill 3 or Condemned, Saint of Change is going for that exact vibe. It's a first-person psychological horror game about a father descending through apartments and sewers to find his family. It's got that heavy, loud in the quiet sound design that makes every footstep feel dangerous. Visually, it's modeled after the PS2 and early Xbox 360 era, where everything looks a bit wet and rusted. Even though it's first person, it keeps the Resident Evil factor alive through its inventory system. Everything, keys, healing items and tools, all takes up precious space in your pockets. You will also find guns, for sure, but the game treats them more like a fragile hope than a power trip. Every bullet you fire is a heavy choice you have to live with. And the puzzles have that weird, dreamlike logic that doesn't always make sense at first. Kinda like those old school head scratchers in Silent Hill that only click once you have been staring at them for like 20 minutes or so. This one takes us to Salento Valley, a city that's basically been leveled by a biohazard disaster. You are playing as part of a mercenary group called the Vultures, who are set in to scavenge for a cure. It's got a really cool setup where you switch between two agents, Leopold, who is more about brute strength and moving the environment, and Amber, who uses a grappling gun to outmaneuver enemies. What makes this unique is the perspective. It's a tactical turn-based game, but it uses a very crunchy PS1 aesthetic with those classic low-poly character models. Even though the combat is turn-based, the Resident Evil factor is very heavy here. You are dealing with limited ammo, healing items that you have to scavenge, and the constant stress of deciding whether to engage a mutant or just sneak past it to save your resources. It's basically Resident Evil if it were a high-stakes strategy game. If you like the idea of Nordic noir mixed with deep sea horror, Heavy Metal Death Can is a perfect fit for you. It's set in an alternate history of 1970s on a Swedish submarine where a mysterious sludge has turned the crew into zombies. The vibe is incredibly oppressive, lots of rust, metallic groans, and a distorted synth soundtrack that really sells the isolation. Visually, it's a total love letter to the late 90s era. It uses fixed camera angles and tank controls, though it does offer modern control options if you prefer those. There is absolutely no hand-holding here as well. You'll be managing a tight inventory, looking for makeshift keys and realizing very quickly that you never have enough ammunition for what's waiting in the next corridor. It feels like a lost PS1 classic that somehow stayed submerged for 30 years. Iron Blight starts with a really chilling premise. You are trapped in a room while things claw at the door and the radio tells you nobody's coming. You are playing as a man named Jack searching for his wife Valeria in a town that feels completely hostile and suffocating. The mood here is all about that feverish night feeling, with flickering lights and rain-slick cobblestones. The design is very hardcore survival horror. There are no health bars or ammo counters on the screen. You have to check your magazines manually, round by round. The art style is gritty and low poly, making a town feel even colder. For the Resident Evil fans, the inventory management is described as agonizing. You are working with a limited grid system where space is a luxury, so every item you pick up could mean leaving something else behind. It is survival horror in its purest, most unrelenting form. Seeing a game like Iron Blight leans so hard into manual magazine checks and agonizing inventory choices really shows that this genre isn't just about the scares. If you are that kind of person who actually enjoys that level of stress, you are definitely in the right place. Maybe consider hitting the subscribe button. It's the easiest way to make sure these deep dives into this niche side of classic survival horror keep showing up in your feed. In Ghost Sector you play as M-07, a prototype robot that awakens in a high-security research station on a distant planet after a disaster puts the place on lockdown. It's a very cool sci-fi twist on the genre, blending futuristic decay with that sterile laboratory horror vibe. You start out completely defenseless and you have to scavenge for modules to upgrade your systems. This one is a treat for the old school crowd. It uses those classic fixed camera angles and tank controls to navigate the facility. The Resident Evil factor here is the energy management. Every upgrade you find makes you stronger, but it also drains your finite power reserves. You are constantly balancing your need to fight back against automated defenses with the need to stay powered up enough to actually solve the environmental puzzles and escape. It's got a very distinct Amiga era aesthetic that really stands out from the pack. Liminal Point takes us to a fog-covered island named Ashen Point, where a rock star named Lyra is searching for her missing bandmate. It's got a very strong Silent Hill energy with the fog and the psychological trauma, but it brings its own flavor to the desolate island trope. You're exploring crumbling mansions and hospitals, trying to figure out what just happened the night Lyra's band fell apart. The game uses a striking isometric perspective with some really moody dynamic lighting. It looks modern but feels retro at the same time. The survival horror feel is all about the timeless formula. You got a limited inventory to manage, you are constantly checking your map to plan your route, and you have to decide if a fight is worth the ammunition. It's designed to be a spine-chilling experience that respects the classics while still looking sharp and new. Sangra is set in a decaying research facility that's being consumed by a metallic corruption. It's a dystopian world where this substance is eating through both the walls and the sanity of the people inside. It's a great premise for body horror, especially since the walls literally bleed steel. This one trades the fixed camera for a modern, over-the-shoulder third-person view. But the heart of the game is pure 90s survival horror. The map is designed in that Metroidvania style we love, interconnected corridors and shortcuts that make the facility feel like one giant puzzle. You'll be using keys and codes to progress, saving your game in safe rooms, and praying you have enough resources to make it back there in one piece. Iris Dissolution is a total throwback to the PlayStation 1 era. You play as Iris, searching for her younger brother Sai after he vanishes in a desolate town. The town itself feels alive and hostile, and the further you go, the more surreal the environments become. It's a very emotional setup, focusing on themes of loss and things that can only be faced and not fought. It's got the whole classic survival horror starter pack, fixed camera angles, tank controls, and a low poly 3D art. The RE factor is definitely the strategic inventory management and the intricate puzzles you have to solve to advance. It even has those fully in-game cutscenes that feel like they were pulled straight out of a demo disc from 1998. It's clearly a love letter to the original Resident Evil and Silent Hill. This one is a bit of a curveball. It's classic survival horror set in a dark, gothic world. You play as Luna Ashcroft, a vampire exploring the massive castle called Whitekern. It's inspired by Kudelka and the original Resident Evil, which is a combo you don't see every day. You are fighting through an interconnected world filled with incomprehensible horrors and the dark plans of Lord Vultures. The game offers both modern and tank controls, and you can even adjust things like inventory size and also limited saves to fit just how hardcore you want the experience to be. The classic survival horror factor is everywhere here. The puzzles, the shortcuts, the agonizing choice of what keep in your limited storage. It's basically Resident Evil if it took place in a massive, sprawling vampire castle, and that sounds like a win to me. If you ever felt like the ocean was scary enough on its own, Faithless Water is here to make it even worse. You wake up from cryostasis in an underwater station that's completely deserted, or at least it's supposed to be. There is no one left to help you, and the station's AI is the only thing greeting you as you try to find a way out of this submerged nightmare. The game is a direct tribute to the 90s classics. It's got that interconnected map design where you are constantly hunting for access keycards to open up new areas. The Resident Evil factor is very strong here. You get a limited inventory and an interconnected storage system, so you are forced to be smart about what you carry. It's all about managing your resources while navigating the dark, watery halls of a dying station. Hollow Stories Lockdown takes us back to the 90s, specifically into a noir-style detective story set in a city under siege by cults and police corruption. You're exploring a gloomy police station, which is a classic survival horror setting if there ever was one. You are trying to piece together a conspiracy that's much bigger than just a few crimes. This game uses a neo-retro visual style. It looks like a high-fidelity version of a PlayStation 1 game. It's got a really interesting camera setup too. It uses cinematic fixed cameras for exploration, but transitions into a first-person view when you are aiming. For the Resident Evil fans, the soul is in the inventory system and the puzzles. You'll be navigating a dark, atmospheric station, managing tight resources, and solving puzzles to unlock new paths through the city. In Hope Voiden is a first-person survival horror game set in a surreal, trench-ridden war zone. You are controlling a roster of 12 different soldiers, each with their own unique traits and missions sent into a forbidden region where no one ever returns from. The game's hook here is the permanent death. You only have 12 lives, and when a soldier dies, they are gone for good. The art style is heavily inspired by the PlayStation 1 era, but the gameplay feels very tactile. The puzzles and the tasks are real-time minigames, like lighting a flare or bandaging a wound, and the enemies, they won't wait for you to finish those. It's all happening in real time. It's a tense, high-stakes take on resource management where your biggest resource is the lives of your squad. The permadeath and persistent world of this game is a lot to take in, and it's definitely one of the more experimental projects on this list. We are in the home stretch now with just a few games left in the list, and if you made it this far into the video, you clearly got the stamina for survival horror. So feel free to leave a like to help the algorithm find more fans like us. Holstin is set in the late 1992 in a small, isolated town in eastern Poland. You are there looking for your friend Bartek, but you quickly realize the town is being consumed by a foul, filthy slime that's deteriorating everything it touches. The atmosphere is incredibly eerie, and the locals you meet seem like they are suspended between life and death. This game is a technical marvel for the pixel art crowd. It uses custom tech that allows the camera to rotate across 8 different angles, all while using hand-drawn pixel environments with dynamic lighting. The Resident Evil factor here is the scavenging. You are constantly hunting for scarce supplies and weapons to fight off twisted monstrosities, and you often have to play along with the locals' delusions just to get answers or items you need to progress. This one takes us to the rural Turkey, where you play as Freya, a woman who is traveling alone and pregnant when she gets drawn into an abandoned town lost to time. It's a very heavy, cinematic setup where the horror isn't just about the ancient Mesopotamian terror waiting beneath the ruins, but also about Freya's own resilience in a world that's gone silent. The game is a total throwback to the 90s classics with its use of cinematic fixed camera angles. It's designed to be played in one setting, almost like watching a horror movie, but with all the mechanical depth we expect. The survival horror factor is grounded in resource management and exploration. You'll be solving psychological and environmental puzzles, uncovering hidden paths, and dealing with limited, high-tension combat that makes every encounter feel significant. Dark Flow starts with a desperate situation. A girl is kidnapped and taken to an abandoned building for ransom, but her father arrives to find blood everywhere and realizes money isn't going to help him here. It's a classic wrong place, wrong time to be setup that quickly descends into a low-poly nightmare. If you're a fan of that PlayStation 1 era, you will appreciate the aesthetic here. It uses that specific low-poly look and cinematic camera angles. The developer is very clear about the Resident Evil factor. It uses tank controls, and if you don't like those, this game probably isn't for you. It's got all that hallmarks: challenging enemies, light puzzles, and a manual save system that requires special coins in limited supply. It's gore-filled, bloody, and unapologetically old school. Void Martyrs has a wild premise. It's a grimdark survival horror about a nun in space. Set in an alternate timeline where the church won the space race, you are sent on a cosmic crusade to a drifting space basilica that's been hit by a biomechanical plague. It draws a lot of inspiration from Darkwood and Signalis, which gives you an idea just how oppressive the atmosphere will be. The gameplay is all about scavenging for scraps in the dark and crafting your own tools and weapons to survive. The Resident Evil factor here adds a fate mechanic. Your actions determine if you access saintly or cursed items. You'll be managing your resources, dealing with so-called stigmata buffs, and trying to finish your holy mission even as the world around you decays into a biomechanical horror. Pinnacle Point is a 19th-inspired psychological and cosmic horror game set on a remote island. You play as Aaron, returning to the site of a failed expedition that he abandoned years ago, leaving his brother behind. Now, the island is calling him back, and the voice in his head sounds way too much like the brother he left for dead. The design is a mix of modern and classic, using a blend of dynamic and fixed camera angles to keep you on edge. It's got that thick, Silent Hill style fog and flickering lights that make the environments feel alive. The survival horror factor is centered on strategic combat and scarce resources. Every encounter with the island's grotesque inhabitants is a struggle for survival. It's a dense, atmospheric mystery where the story is told through cryptic notes and fragmented memories. Whether it's a fixed camera throwback or a new take on low poly FPS, developers are proving that you don't need a multi-billion-dollar studio to create genuine dread. You just need good resource management, a haunting atmosphere, and a map that feels like one big puzzle and a bunch of devoted developers who are fans themselves. I'm curious to know which of these 20 games caught your eye the most. Drop a comment and let me know. Also, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the next wave of Resident Evil-inspired survival horror games, a like to this video and a sub to the channel really helps out. I was Gabe, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep gaming.